Good afternoon. Tony Abatini coming in from Frozen Ropes University in Chester, New York. Another episode of Beyond the Ball, our monthly podcast providing support, resources, and really good information to coaches, players, and parents in the United States and abroad. Special guest Andy Bass, who's the mental performance director coordinator with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Known Andy for a few years now. Great young man, great insight. Has a tremendously challenging and awesome job being around the Pittsburgh Pirates Major League team. He'll be joining us to provide, hopefully, some insight and some connection on some of the tools that he uses to work with Major League Baseball players and how they could be helpful in our daily lives and in working with amateur athletes across the country. Stay tuned. Andy.
Tony, good morning, sir.
How are you doing today?
Just a beautiful day over here in St. Louis. How are you doing?
Beautiful day in St. Louis. Well, it's raining in New York, but as we tell the children and athletes, there's sunshine forthcoming sometime in the afternoon, and hopefully by game time in St. Louis, the sun will come out and the Pirates will be ready to play.
Yeah, I mean there'll be a game going on regardless. I don't think we're going to get any rain here. It's yeah, at least it's not terribly hot. That's the good thing. Usually it's smoking hot whenever we're here.
Right. Well, first off, I want to officially welcome you to Beyond the Ball. Very privileged to have the former Davidson College flamethrower, Andy Bass, who played professional baseball with the Rays and climbed his way up the ladders and now is in the big leagues in a different capacity, certainly. Although, Andy, you know what? Perhaps if the splitter and fastball are working, is a possible player comeback forthcoming for you?
Highly doubt it. Well, I don't even think I was good enough at my best.
Andy, that's why they have independent ball. I've seen enough independent ball games that can you at least, are you on the other side of 83 to 85 on your fastball?
Not anymore.
Okay.
Not anymore.
Okay. You are officially retired then, Andy. I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
Yes.
But I can't thank you enough for joining us, and your intro will be in the first part of the podcast. But I wanted to get into some interesting concepts and whatnot. But I think the audience would be interested in what is the typical day of a mental performance coach like yourself at the major league level. Walk us through, and I know there's not a typical day based on the little I know about it, but give us, if you can, in the audience, what typically goes on a typical, atypical day.
Usually, whether at home or on the road, you're getting to the ballpark early-ish, early afternoon, around noon or 1 o'clock. If you want to get a workout in before the players show up, sometimes we'll have medical meetings just to go over some rehab processes with some players. And then at that point, and anybody that's kind of gone through either a master's or PhD within sports psychology or motor learning, really it's just being around. It's just being there and ready when the time is right. It's kind of hard to force this on people. It's not like, hey, we need you in the weight room. Hey, we need you in the training room. People have to trust and build rapport, and they have to want mental skills. You may not like going to the training room, but if you go in there, you're going to get stronger. You may not like, I'm not going to the weight room. You may not like going to the training room, but if you go in there, you will stay healthy. You have to like mental skills to get good at it. And so really it's just being around throughout the day. You're out during batting practice. You're out helping out with infield, helping out any way you can, engaging in small talk with conversations. You'll find yourself in a 10-minute talk with a player about movies, about fishing, about hunting, and then in that 7-minute mark, there'll be a minute and a half or 2 minutes of something really good, really impactful about something they may be used to do in the minor leagues or high school. And then you turn it back to the movies and the fishing and the hunting and their life, and they haven't even realized that they've had a mental skills conversation. It's just those be brief, be bold, be gone. These guys don't like to be lectured at, nor does anybody. And so it's just a lot of asking questions. A good question is better than a smart answer. And then, you're done with the workday. And once again, everything I'm going to say is you are just around and you're noticing and you're just being impactful with conversation. The game starts. I'm fortunate to be in the dugout, so I'm just noticing certain behaviors, chatting with guys, maybe going up in the clubhouse, talking with pitchers or, injured position players that are in the training room. The game gets over. 9:30, 10 o'clock, and you've already been at the field since noon. You hang around for a little bit, then you go back to the hotel or you go back home and you rinse and repeat the next day. So it's a 10, 11 hour day process, pretty much 7 days a week.
It's a long grind.
Very much so. As I'm exhausted by the end of the year, and I don't even have to hit a 98-mile-an-hour fastball.
Andy, your biggest frustration at times in your work, and you made reference to it before, because there's still a certain stigma in mental health, or as we call it on campus here, mental wealth. Athletes, in my opinion, should, no different than going to the trainer, no different than going to the hitting coach. There could and should, in a perfect world that we don't live in, there should be an application and an integration of some type of mental skills training, whether it's meditation, whether it's some breath play, a proactive, before I'm in a slump, I should be talking about these things and making it a part of my daily routine. Why in 2025 is there still this stigma with athletes at your level and even at the college level to raise their hand and say, not only do I want help, but I need help, and it's something that I should be proactive about?
Yes, it's certainly there. Is it better? Has the stigma lessened or been mitigated from 25, 30 years ago? Yes, it absolutely has. Is it where we need it to be? No, but good things come to those that wait. It's an esoteric concept. When I was, so for those listening, I got my doctorate in sports psychology and motor learning at Tennessee. And what I found really interesting was I found that whenever I integrate more of like the physical motor learning concepts, like, hey, what are some training techniques that can be utilized to help with mental skills? I found that bringing it back to the physical and the tactile can help, because mental health and mental skills, and they do overlap, but they are different. They're esoteric in nature. You can't point to them, and you can't really even see progress on them. You can see progress in your swing. You can see progress in your mechanics. You can see progress in your VO2 max. But you can't really measure, at least from a mental health perspective, on an outside perspective. Yes, there are batteries and exams we can do, but it's something that's very individual to the person. And because it's not physical in nature, and most athletes are physical in their mindset as well, it just may not be as comfortable or as accessible to talk about. And yes, the stigma is still there. It's still that idea of I'm fine. And FINE stands for the F word: insecure, neurotic, emotional. It would be wonderful if athletes could get to this point of understanding that we need to do difficult things, we need to do uncomfortable things, and the three hardest words in the English language to say, but the three most powerful, are I need help.
Right.
Particularly with anything. And I think the stigma is just that we're still in a very, whatever you want to call it, like overly hyper-masculine world where it's deny your feelings and act like you have answers. And we all know that just leads to serious problems.
Well, and especially at the level that you're at, Andy, and I know I'll enter that world a little differently in the off season with the vision piece of it, but you're talking about some egos in a good way. Major league players are warriors, okay? And at times for them to make room for the possibility that they're not invincible is almost counterproductive to what they need to do, particularly on the hitting side, which is so difficult in and of itself. So I think you're right. The I need help, which you would want more players to embrace, until they struggle to the point of, and I hate to say rock bottom, a line I love using all the time: you dig the well before you get thirsty. And it's just such a great line, and it's all about being proactive and making mental skills a daily application to it. But it's tough to do. It's still a sign of weakness to an extent, and I see it with the amateur players and even big league hitters and pitchers that I'll talk to in the off season, that I don't really want to talk about it, but, and then that but, as you pointed out, leads to a discussion. And, you're one of the best in the game. And I remember our mutual friend, Ken Ravizza, would always talking about waiting for the learning and the teaching moment, and just waiting for that opportunity for the player to really want to share and to listen to an extent. But At the amateur level, it's a little different because you can drip feed and be a little bit more aggressive, right? I'll go to a college program, and I'm not asking, but guess what? We're doing vision training in the morning. We're going to meditate at 11 o'clock, and it is also mandatory for players, right, to journal, and we're going to do some what I call best flicks or visualization, and we jam it down their throat. Well, that's very different than what you can do, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the old self-determination theory adage of allowing for autonomy and control and choice. Yeah, this is not something at the highest level that can be jammed down people's throats. And I know what you mean by like jamming it down their throats. You're still allowing for them to come to you and you're finding that middle ground. But if I were to get up in front of the team and say, everybody, the first game of every series, you are all coming in here and we're going to do 10 minutes of mindfulness, I would be shown the door faster than I could even finish that sentence.
And Andy, but what's frustrating about that is that some of them probably would be better and be more productive if you did.
Probably. Absolutely. It's a rule of thirds. There's a third of the room that wants nothing to do with mental skills. They'll say, Andy, you seem like a nice guy. I'll say, hey to you, but it's not for me. That's fine.
Right.
There's a third that are all in on it. Like, yeah, give me what you got. And then there's a third that are in the middle. That's like, I'm not really sure. Like, I'm not out on it, but I'm not in on it. And you're right. Those are the ones that could benefit from something like that.
Right. Do you find also in the day and age, Andy, that most of the hitters and even on the pitching side, they have their own off-season private hitting coach, and they've got their own private hitting coach to an extent. Do you sense at times that just some of them have an outside resource that they'll go to at times to talk about mental skills? And if the bottom line, whether it's for the Pittsburgh Pirates or anyone else, is to win, I would think that you would be okay with that. But do you sense at times there's another avenue for them to talk about and be reminded of the importance of mental skills training?
So you're asking if other guys talk to maybe outside mental skills coaches, and am I okay with that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell people all the time, I don't care if you talk to me at all. I just want you to talk to somebody.
Right.
And I don't have to know anything about it. I've realized I can help them. Like I try not to like beat the PhD drum too hard, but I'm like, hey, I'm here if you want to help. But the other thing too is I'm also a company man. Like I tell the guys that I will quit. I will ask to be fired before I release any confidential information about you to the front office. But I'm still a Pittsburgh Pirate, and I'm still part of this organization. So people are going to be skeptical, and that's okay. I understand that. But as long as you have somebody that you can go to, that you can open up with, that you can be vulnerable, that you can let in, I tell guys, fantastic. And if you want to let me know what y'all are talking about so we can continue to work on it when I'm in your life daily, absolutely. But if not, that is your prerogative. So as long as people are talking to somebody, that's all I care about.
And that's the collaboration that you hope exists. And yes, Andy, and I've heard from major league players before at times, I don't really want to talk to the in-house mental performance guy because it's a direct pipeline to the front office. And you already addressed that. There's confidentiality issues, and the reality is there are some mental performance coaches out there that will take conversations and quite frankly hold it against the player, or all of a sudden now the general manager and the manager are smack in the middle of conversations that should have been confidential. I think that's an issue that I'm sure you have to constantly be reminding the players that no different than talking to a priest, that conversation stays with the player and the mental performance coach.
Absolutely, and I guess I'm just pumping my tires a little bit here. So I'm currently in the process of doing my residency, finishing a master's in clinical mental health counseling that would make me a licensed professional counselor. And I always tell the players that I'm bound ethically by the Association of Applied Sports Psychology Code of Ethics, which is different. It's similar but different from APA. But once I get this, I am legally bound by confidentiality. So I'm hoping that would actually, help the players, even though they'd be like, you know what, I trust Andy, he's bound by this anyway. But yeah, we should all of us should respect what a private conversation is. We don't have to be a clergyman or bound legally by our professional organization or just by the law. We should all recognize what a private enduring conversation is, and that should be able to stay. A person should be allowed their privacy with another person.
And I think that's what, and you're certainly in that category, that's what the best of the best do. That it should not be by law. I look at the attorney-client privilege that I had when I was a practicing attorney, and I didn't really need that as a way of not sharing and disclosing information, whether it's morally or ethically, just doing the right thing. And I think, to your point, the more that you can remind players that this is a safe space that they're talking in, that'll continue not only to build relationships, but for them to have even more share at some point. I think it's all you can do, but the reality is there are some mental performance coaches that have really made it difficult. And now, people like yourself, quite frankly, are suffering from some of the big mouths that have been out there.
Mm-hmm. It is a shame, and it's truly a case of a few bad apples spoil a bunch. I don't know everybody working in the business today, but nearly all of them that I've met are incredible people that all they want to do is help others, and they're not in it for themselves. They're not in it for any ego reasons. Okay, yeah, we all have ego. Let's just put that aside. That's true. It's just to the extent. But yeah, 99% of all the mental skills coaches that I've met, mental skills and mental health professionals, are wonderful people that just want to help and are thankful to be in the position they're in.
Yep. Andy, let's move, different topic, right? You're going to build the best player for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Let's talk about the traits possessed by the elite performers. And I know there's a major menu from a mental toughness, resilience, confidence, but give our listening audience, boy, if you had to put together the ideal superhero, and what would those traits be that you would want them to possess?
Number one, I would want them to be curious about themselves and the world around them. It doesn't take two smart people to have an intelligent conversation. It takes two curious people. If you have a curious athlete that's curious about themselves introspectively, and they're curious about their own performance, and they're curious about ways to make themselves better, you've got a very scary person there, because they're going to be constantly looking to find the answer, and they're going to be not going to be stuck in themselves because they're searching and they're exploring. You mentioned the resilience piece. Somebody that's resilient, but more somebody that's adaptable, that's adjustable, somebody that knows that they want to show up on Tuesday different than they were on Monday. The Kobe Bryant quote of, I don't hate to win, I don't hate to lose, I don't like to win, I play to learn. I don't capitulate to those two outcomes. From the confidence perspective, I think we've all heard you want to be on the world's dullest roller coaster, particularly in baseball. The higher the high you go on a roller coaster, the lower the low. So can you ride that wave of the ups and downs? Can you reframe the old baseball as a game of failure to how can I reframe it to where I'm personally having more success rather than once again capitulating to the game of failure? And then I would also want somebody that's not afraid to ask for help. I think that goes with the curiosity. And with all of that, you can put all the physical attributes to it, but then when you have this person that's curious, that understands where their confidence comes from, it comes from their process, not their outcome. You've got somebody that understands what it means to be adjustable along with the resilience factor. And then you have somebody that's willing to ask for help, that doesn't have the ego to say, I've got it all figured out. I'd say without, creating this whole diatribe of what a great player mentally looks like, I would say that's where I would start. And Tony, I would love to know, based on what I've said, what you think, your build a player would be.
Well, I mean, you just created a first round draft pick right there in the way of mental skills. I mean, to me, the curiosity, growth mindset, always looking. The players that I talk to, Andy, there's a certain insecurity level that they use to their advantage. I remember talking to Bernie Williams, who won a batting title 10 years ago, and he's knocking on the door New Year's Day at one of our facilities in New York. And I opened the door and I said, "What are you doing here?" And his answer to me was, there's about 30 guys in the American League right now that are doing nothing. And I need to be able to say that I worked out today, in addition to all the prospects in the Yankee organization that want my job. I think that insecurity as a motivation is a big component that the best players in the game I think just the most successful people in the world are constantly insecure. Might not be the best word, but this never-ending journey to I want to get better, and they embrace that I want to get better, and they look at insecurity as a strength level. But yeah, I think the curiosity, the growth mindset that everyone talks about, it frustrates me. When you look at your Fab Four, we'll call them, Andy. And you have players that are on the verge of doing great things, but they're missing one of these silos. That to me has to be frustrating for you also, that the amount of information and knowledge and concepts and cues and tools and tricks, however we want to call them, boy, if they could just be a little bit more curious and not be so stubborn sometimes in just continuing to, well, I'm just going to work harder. And we all know by the time we're 18 years old, someone has told us not about working harder anymore, right? If you're doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same results, we understand that concept. But yeah, to me, you've hit the big ones on there. And I think a lot of it has to do with the younger players is this other people's opinion, which certainly in social media has crucified so many young children in anxiety, and I wonder what this person thinks about us and whatnot. And it happens at your level too. I'm sure there's guys in your clubhouse that should stay away from social media, should not be so concerned about reading what the Pittsburgh Herald or the newspapers are saying about, and that other people's opinion just continues at times to erode confidence.
Absolutely. And I don't think that there's ever been a time where, unless you're a sociopath, where we don't think that other people's opinion matters. Like, yes, to a certain extent we think that, but yeah, 40 years ago, all you had to worry about was a few beat writers, like you said, writing something in the newspaper. Now everybody can say anything about you at all times, and it's devastating. And certainly, it would be nice if, I guess, the majority of us could be off social media. But it definitely plays a role. And you mentioned the insecurity piece, and when you mentioned the Bernie Williams story, what resonated with me is this idea that typically the most elite performers in the world at anything, be it sports or music, tend to have a high degree of imposter syndrome. So when you were talking to me, that's where that insecurity is. It's like, I don't deserve to be here. I'm not good enough. So then they keep working, and that's how they get to where they are. So it's a chicken egg thing of that insecurity, that imposter syndrome of, oh my gosh, they're going to find out I'm a fake. I don't need to be here. So I got to find a way to prove that I'm not a fake. And so then I get better. And then all of a sudden I'm, Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about, you talk about evaluating and predicting. The Major League Draft is sometime in July, and the Pittsburgh Pirates and all other organizations are out there looking for the next. They're looking for the next Aaron Judge, Shohei, whoever, the next Paul Skeens or whatnot. How does the understanding the importance of mental skills, how do you evaluate, to the extent that you can, prospects? Right? Before someone is taking an X amount of round, we know about the physical skills, we know about exit speeds, we know about the 60 time and all the, quote, intangibles. But how does someone like yourself, how can you be an asset, Andy, to the scouts and just evaluating players so that when it's time to take someone, you can at least say, there's a pretty good possibility that, and we'll use the 4 that you just mentioned, there's something there. We think that there's the beginning of a platform that's going to allow this young man to be able to get and survive and get to the big leagues at some point. How do you do that as a prediction tool?
I wish I had more confidence in this answer than some of the other ones, simply because I'm not on the. My former boss, Dr. Bernie Holiday, who is truly like the Elvis Presley in sports psychology circles. So he actually works on the amateur side, and he's let me in a little bit on what his process is like. And there are certain assessments you can give, the AIQ, Athletic Intelligence Questionnaire, something to that effect. I'm sure I butchered that. But from what Dr. Holiday has told me, and just from some of the things that I've seen, obviously body language is a huge thing. But Bernie really looks at their behavior in the dugout.
Yep.
Particularly pitchers that have, after a bad inning, when he will interview some of the top prospects, he'll kind of notice how often they throw out cliches. regarding baseball or themselves. And when he hears a lot of cliches, to him, that's kind of saying that this person doesn't quite know how to think for themselves yet.
Right.
They don't quite have enough introspection there. But I'd say the body language piece is big, and the more you can see a player, obviously, that is as well. What kind of teammate are they? Are they interacting with their teammates, or because they're this big draft prospect, did they already think that they're above their teammates and they don't have to be a good teammate? Those would just be some things that I could throw out right now. I wish I had a better answer as opposed to some of the others. It's just a world that I kind of understand tangentially.
Well, and to your point, the draft is such a risk. I remember talking to the legendary scout with the Pittsburgh Pirates, Jack Bowen. I don't know if you know Jack.
Yes, I do.
Has been he's been to visit me, and we've had discussions. We actually wrote a baseball article together called The Third Eye and what he looks for. And I remember his line that no matter what, it is still like going to the casino. It is a risk. Mm-hmm. It is a risk. Yes. That's how scouting directors get fired. That's how a 19th rounder somehow finds its way. It's that intangible, and you're predicting. You're predicting no different than will he throw harder, will he stay healthy? But the mental skills piece of it is really a crapshoot. And to your point, and Dr. Holliday is one of the best. You're just providing the scouting director and the general manager with here's more chips to put in. And if there are red flags as it relates to body language, they're not what we call a great BTF, a best teammate forever. They're using cliches without really understanding and personalizing them. That's at least another piece. You mentioned the AIQ. You've got S2 cognition. I mean, there's so many tests that go on. Notwithstanding their transferability and how effective they are, it is still a coin toss, not only on the mental performance prediction, but just simply on the skill set. I mean, think about in any industry, Andy, I say this all the time to scouts, in any other industry, if you failed as much as prospects did, you'd be bankrupt. I mean, if you think about you take now it's only 20 rounds. Back when you were playing, it was probably more than that. But you have 20 guys that were selected by the Pirates last year. Well, how many of them are going to make it to the big leagues? That's one question. Then the second would be how many will sustain and have service time to actually make a living doing it. But how many of them will never get to the 40-man roster? Those numbers are probably the majority will not. And there's a lot of factors on that, but I'm convinced, and I think you would agree, so many of them would have a better chance of being a real asset to an organization if their curiosity, their adaptability, their resilience, their reference point, if they were better and were improved once they were in somebody's system.
Agreed. Yeah, and I just knocked on cliches, but I think all of us in baseball understand that at some point the physical tools tap out, and it's the mental space that takes you to the top. You know,
you hear at times with major league coaches, and I spend a lot of time, like you do, probably not as much as you do, but mine is different organizations, and I'll hear, you know what, Tony, the hitting coach, the pitching coach, the managers, they're really the best mental performance coaches, that they have the rapport, and they're really the ones that can impart wisdom and be able to provide the training, unlike someone with a PhD or someone like yourself that's never played in the big leagues. How would you respond to that?
I agree. I think that our coaches should be the best mental skills coaches. Yep. And I would say that, you know, a large part of my days is asking questions and helping the coaches be better mental skills coaches and better motor learning coaches. I know with our previous model in the minor leagues with our mental skills, it was coach the coaches.
Right.
Yeah. The coaches are with them every day. Hopefully the players trust them implicitly. Yeah, it would be great if our coaches were the best mental skills coaches, because they've got the most touch points, and they should have the knowledge to be able to withstand that. Now, it's very difficult to be a major league coach. I don't know how these guys do it. You know, bandwidth is only so much.
Right.
But in an ideal situation, yes, our hitting coaches, manager, pitching coaches, what have you, would be the mental skills coaches. And I think, and I love the fact that our coaches with the Pirates are very curious about not only sports psychology, but also motor learning. And I love the conversations that I have with our hitting and pitching departments regarding these conversations and how to integrate them globally and specifically.
I think you're right. I think the coaches that are with them, that have the trust, the credibility, in a perfect world, they would be the conduits to this wonderful world that we call mental performance. But here's the other side of it. Some of them get frustrated. Some of them are simply anecdotal. Well, this is what I did. This is what I did to get out of a slump. And in that situation, it becomes counterproductive. But to your point, when you have a hitting coach or a pitching coach that is curious, that wants to spend time with people like yourself and expanding and refining the tools that are needed, that's the best of both worlds. I would agree. I've heard at times in talking to players, if I hear the same stupid story over and over again from my pitching coach or the manager about suck it up and, failure is part of the game and don't think about it, all the cliches that make things worse. So, yeah, in a perfect world, you're coaching the coaches, which you do, and you do it very well, I hear. I think because they have the credibility, the trust, they're in the trenches with them. I just wish that the hitting and pitching, and even the managers to an extent, would spend more time getting better at what you do. But touche to your point, they only have X amount of time a day, and half these hitting and pitching coaches are simply surviving to keep their job.
Yeah, and the amount of information, the amount of time. I mean, Tony, you've been in this game longer than I have, but the amount of time we're at the field is staggering. And I'll hear some of our other coaches that are somewhat older or a lot older than me, and I'll hear how often they used to be at the field, and it feels like we are there 30 to 40% longer than we used to be. And so, yeah, these coaches are they're grinding and they're just doing everything they can to help make the players better. So I understand their bandwidth is finite, and I'm appreciative for the time that they do give me.
What's interesting, Andy, about this, we live in the world of data. We live in the world of hitters being enamored with iPads and thinking that's going on. And I hear this all the time with hitters and even major league hitting coaches. Are we putting too much stuff in their heads? When you think about performance and being in a state of not thinking and flow, whatever term that we're using, the best hitters in the game, particularly on the hitting side, their eyes to an extent, and they trust their swing to an extent. I think, and this is just my opinion, you can agree or disagree, we've got some cognitive clogging that's going on way too often with hitters, that based upon the reports and based upon what they just saw and tendencies, and now they're going up with these overriding thoughts that many times derail their ability to stay relaxed and to, quote, get a good pitch to hit. Because at the major league level, without making it so simple, put an easy swing on a good pitch. You talk about keeping it simple, yet the amount of data and bandwidth, which is here to stay, and I'm not poo-pooing that. How does a hitting coach, a pitching coach, and even someone like yourself try to make sure that players understand there's a time and a place to devour it, look at it, integrate it, but once you leave the on-deck circle, or as we call it in New York, the circle of champions, you cannot be so ingrained and have those thoughts overriding your swing or your delivery.
I completely agree. And, the amount of, and we're just not good at human beings at digesting numbers. We're really much better at digesting narratives and stories, but it's the numbers. And like yourself, I'm not poo-pooing the information either. It's a tool and it's useful. But with the cognitive fog that you mentioned, and yes, the more things that we try to hold in our head at any given time, we know from research that significantly impairs our reaction time. And we're already 30 to 40 milliseconds behind when the pitch is thrown to us. Right. Like, we're never in real time because of the time it takes to the photons to hit our eyes and for us to process it. So if you're not doing everything you can to be in the present moment, if you're already 30 to 40 milliseconds behind just naturally, that's a tough hill to climb, with needing 250 milliseconds overall to make a decision to hit the pitch. And then also, when pressure hits, like playing in a major league game, our bandwidth for our working memory just is shot.
Yep.
And so now all this information you're trying to keep in your head, you're just almost wasting time because you're not going to be able to keep it in your head when the pressure hits. And the key to not thinking is just be hyper focused on one thing and just make that an external goal.
Right.
But I think not the issue, the challenge is they're in the cage, they're in the turtle hitting, and there's information there. There's iPads there. There's, whatever TrackMan, there's anything, all this information there. So now your mind is associating being in the box with thinking about this information, with looking at this information. And the concept of state-dependent memory would then say, well, then when you step in the box in the game, you're going to be more likely to be thinking and feeling what you were thinking and feeling and doing in the cage, which is thinking about the numbers and thinking about your swing. So we have to have this transition phase at some point during the day where it just moves away from the kind of the training mindset to just this trusting mindset. Because if you never get to the trusting mindset during the day, well, that state-dependent memory is going to take over in the bottom of the first inning, and you're just going to be back in training mode and swing mode.
And you have tremendously described the biggest challenge and problem that exists right now at the college level and at the professional level with hitting. And you would have no major league hitting coach disagree with what you just said. Having said that, how do you effectively either weed them off? And each player is different. Some players can digest and take in and be in the training mindset and very quickly flip the switch, as I say, and go into trust mode. Most can't. In my opinion, it gets blended to the point of, and I'll be asked all the time from a vision standpoint, Tony, how is it possible that player just took a 93-mile-an-hour cock shot right down the middle of the plate and took the pitch for strike three? and my answer to them is that, the problem is they never saw it. They never saw it because of the trying to guess, or the tendencies or the prediction said that most likely that pitcher was not going to throw that particular pitch. That overriding thought didn't allow their eyes to simply respond to a mistake. How do hitting coaches at your level and even at the amateur level, how do you battle that, Andy? Because it's at a point at the college level, and I could be wrong, I will recommend to managers and even the hitting coaches, you need to either eliminate it or lessen the time in which you're making measurements and allowing hitters to just break down their swing over and over again. Major league level is a little different, okay? These are guys, it's their careers. You're not going to be able to, whether it's Matt Haig or anyone else, hey, you can't look at the iPad today. And we're not going to let you look at exit velocity in the tunnel. But what about the younger players? When does it get to the point where someone like yourself that can oversee and sees the danger of that, when does it become a bit more structured? I'm assuming at the minor league level it might be easier to implement.
Yes, I think this is something that certainly at the lower levels would probably be the place to do it. And because the big leaguers, they've earned the right to be big leaguers. And I guess within that, particularly with young big leaguers, instead of like providing ultimatums, anytime we, throw the book at them and say, hey, you can never do this, or you must always do this, throwing those ultimatums never really works that well. But just asking questions of, hey, have you considered, from 4:30 on, when you're in the cage, you're not looking at TrackMan. Like, have you considered not doing that? Have you considered just hopping in on the Traject, that amazing machine that replicates the spin rate? Have you considered when you hop in on Traject to just treat it like a game instead of looking at film of yourself 5 seconds later, or looking at the spin rate and as it came off the bat and your vertical approach angle, all that? Have you considered just trying to compete? And so I think that can possibly be a way in of, have you considered the opposite? Right. Which is kind of an empirical path forward. I think they did a study at Stanford many years ago looking at confirmation bias. And the phrase, have you considered the opposite? It didn't change people's minds, but these were some hot button issues they were researching, like gun control, politics, religion. And it didn't change their minds, but it kept them from doubling down. And I think when we show players like, hey, you shouldn't be looking at video at this time because of research or evidence X, Y, and Z, people tend to double down on their bias. But we can just ask, have you considered the opposite of this? that at least opens up to the
Right.
conversation.
Well, what's interesting, Andy, this is a game about results at the major league level. And what at times will frustrate major league coaches, you've got a player that they become stubborn. This is how they got there. But when you're hypothetically hitting a $160, okay, and have not been able to perform, because there is a major jump both in intangible and the physical game from AAA to the big leagues. I mean, you see it all the time. You'll see players succeed, do well, dominate at the AAA level. They make that magical jump. Is the pitching that much better? Well, you've got better command of breaking balls, velocity might be better, but just simply the expectations and the external part of the game changes. You're now playing in front of X amount of people versus AAA. To me, when players just simply hold on to, well, this is what I've been doing, and their results don't show it. The amount of major league hitters in particular that crash and burn and just simply, this is how I got here, doesn't necessarily mean this is how I stay. And that's a big problem, even at the college level. While I hit 490 at my travel team program, now you're in the SEC battling, real pitching, and the results aren't there. Because at some point, the results have to tell a player, my way is not working up. And at that point, they should be running to people like you and the hitting coach to say, give me something different because the numbers aren't there.
One would hope so. I know we've mentioned in an ideal world, but yes, in an ideal world, one would hope so. That John or Jim Harbaugh quote, if you don't like change, you'll like irrelevancy even less.
Yeah. And that has to be frustrating. I know it's frustrating the hitting coaches, pitching coaches, and even someone like yourself when you see the routines and the pre-actions and how they go about their business, and the results aren't there, and they're still in that 1/3 category as you described. It's still trying to beat themselves up, figure it out on their own, and still not look for some support. That's got to be very frustrating for you, Andy.
It certainly is, and it's not even frustrating of a sense of, oh my gosh, I see what we could do to get you better. It's frustrating in the sense that they're not going to get out of that hole, and they're just continuing to make life worse for themselves. They're continuing to take I don't buy into the fact of, hey, just have fun. You're playing a kid's game up here. No, it's hard. This is a job. Like let's be real. The pressure is real. This is not fun and joy as in we were when we were 12 and 13 years old, right. But at least joy in the sense of I belong here, and I can find times where I can find confidence in myself and my capabilities.
Yes. Andy, I'm going to give you, we call them the three evil sisters of self-doubt, worry, and fear. You're now, I'm giving you a hypothetical, you've got a college player that is struggling. If you could share, and I know it's tough to do, some of the early concepts and just conversations you would have with a hypothetical player on, and we're using the three evil sisters, self-doubt, worry, and fear. Pick one of them. What would be the beginning of a conversation that might be helpful for that young player to understand where the three evil sisters come from, the time zone in which they live in, and how they can better prepare for the moment on their next game?
With fear, I would say, yeah, good. You should. This isn't easy. There's a YouTube video of Michaela Schifrin, one of the best downhill skiers of all time, saying that right before she goes down that mountain, she's like, "Am I afraid? Yes. Do I have fear? Yes." The more that we try to deny any of our emotions, the stronger they get. Yes, if you have fear, that's fine. Don't be afraid of having fear. That's where I would start with that. And I could continue to go down that, but I'll hit the other two. With worry, it would be, okay, to what magnitude or valence is this worry, and what direction is it being put at? Is it worried about what my coach thinks, what my teammates think, what my parents think? Am I worried about my performance? I'm not saying any of these are better or worse than the other, but to what direction and magnitude is that worry? And with self-doubt, it would be, where is that doubt coming from? So with worry, it's what's the direction? And with self-doubt, it's what's the origin? And where is that coming from? That's where I would start with those.
How important, if you were with a high school program or a college program, Andy, where there can be more structure, and certainly at the level that you're out at, you can have mandatory breath work and mandatory meditation and more. You cannot be in the starting lineup today if you're not journaling or showing attitudes of gratitude. What about at the high school, college level? Put yourself in. You're now a high school or college coach. What would you love to see and implement at a level in which you can certainly be much more proactive?
If I had been with a high school team for several years where I had seniors that I'd had as freshmen, where I could have started to teach them these skills, once they became seniors, I would say, I want you all to be the drivers and teachers. I'm going to provide you the structure, like you're seniors in high school, like I'm going to help you out here. I would love to create this revolving cycle of seniors and juniors teaching the underclassmen, and I'm there as a supervisor. I'm making sure that the message is still there. But to use mental skills as a rapport building with the upper and younger classmen, yes. I think that would be an amazing thing to do. And regarding what we teach, like obviously there's the gambit of what we teach, and then it would even be great to, if we're doing, breath work 3 times a week, to then flip the script on maybe something easy, like just running breath work or running a PMR script of, hey, you know what, now a sophomore, you're going to take us through our mindfulness script today up for 5 minutes. And then the next day, a different sophomore, and then the next day, a freshman, where everybody's learning to teach these things, and that it's peer coaching. And what we've seen, I know you know this, Tony, but what we've seen in research is peer coaching and peer teaching is just as, if not more effective than coach, player, or teacher, student teaching.
Clearly. You'd make a great high school coach one day, Andy, and not that you're looking for a career change anytime soon. Top 5, I asked this question to all of the mental performance people that I learn from and collaborate with. The 5 big tools, what are they in Andy Bass's toolbox?
This would change based on sport. I'm going to say definitely self-talk, because in baseball, you're in your head so much because there's so much downtime. A little different in more of a free-flowing sport, like basketball or hockey or volleyball. I would say self-talk. I would say adaptability, adjustability. I know some people say resilience. I don't dislike resilience, but Dr. Holliday has a great story where he says, if I want to get out of a room and Andy's standing in the doorway and I walk up and he punches me in the nose and I go down, and I get up and I shake myself off, and then I try to go through the door again, and Andy punches me in the nose and I go down again. Now I'm all bloodied up, dust myself off. I try to go through again, and bam, he just knocks me down. I'm being resilient, but I'm also being stupid. Why don't I just go out a different door?
Yep.
So once again, I don't dislike the term, but
great distinction. Right. I think resilience is the ability to get up, as Rocky Balboa would say, but at some point, me continuing to take jabs over and over again is not going to knock out Apollo Creed. I need a new game plan, and I need to be adaptable in order to sustain the resilience.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I would say self-talk, resilience. I would say, I'm going to say with the self-determination aspect, but being able to create choice. And I think that shows a level of maturity of I choose what I choose to do. So having this level of agency in one's life, and I think we've learned that self-control is a muscle and it can be grown. And so we have adaptability, choice, and just the introspection to take that choice.
Yep.
You can never get past confidence. I think that, I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but confidence in one's own confidence in who someone is as a person, knowing who they are, the acceptance and commitment therapy approach of, I am not my thoughts, but I am my values, and I'm confident in my values. So
you almost sounded like Michael Singer there with "I am not your thoughts." I love that, and you talk about such a simple yet profound distinction in talking to athletes. That voice that sits in all of us that continues to distract and drive the ego. And I love the fact that you said that. I find myself talking about vision sometimes, that not only you are not your thoughts, but you have the choice to see versus looking, which is a whole nother conversation we could have. But I think those are the pillars that clearly could be effective.
And it's purely my opinion. And mental skills are very subjective in nature too. We could split hairs on what's a skill and what's just more of a mechanism. But I think just shooting from the hip, that's where I would go, especially in baseball with the self-talk, because we spend so much time in our own head.
Andy, how does one find a zone? Ken Reviz and I would talk sometimes over a glass of wine, just one. I mean, Ken was not a big drinker, neither was I, and we would talk about the zone and the flow state and whatnot, and we know athletes stumble in and out of it to an extent. From your perspective, define this bliss, this state of being in which athletes are just simply non-thinking, non-judgmental, and are playing at a state that unfortunately they can never maintain.
Yeah, I will certainly describe it. I think you mentioned first, how do they find it? I don't think it's not a switch. You do everything you can to put yourself in the best circumstances for it to happen. But this flow state, and I know Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi researched that a lot, and I know Ken researched it a lot too. Yeah, it's not something deliberate you can put yourself in, but you do the best that you can to craft that, whether it's mindfulness, visualization, eating right, practicing mental skills. When I think of flow state, and you like you mentioned, I played minor league ball for a hot second, but I played baseball my entire life. I can think of less than 5 times from the time I was a kid to the time I stopped playing where I probably experienced flow state in any sport. Baseball, basketball, football, and baseball, any sport. How I would describe it is, this might be a dated reference, but in the movie The Matrix, at the very end, after Neo recognizes that he truly is the one, and he's in this hallway, and he can see the Matrix, he can see the agents through the code. And Agent Smith comes over and is trying to fight him, and Neo's just fighting him with one hand, and it's not like he's even paying attention. He's not even looking at Agent Smith, and he's able to just take down this guy. So it's just this automatic, amazing, heightened reality, heightened sense of consciousness, where everything that we used to think about this particular action just falls away. It's like being in a trance. It's a dreamlike state.
Such a intangible, and when you talk to athletes, everyone describes it differently, and I think right on, trying to find it sometimes makes it even more difficult. It's like I'm going to hope and pray that the sun rises tomorrow, when in fact it's going to happen anyway to an extent. Question about, where does spirituality factor in on mental performance training, Andy? And I know you and I have had conversations with this before. I truly believe that it is a mechanism, it is a cue, it is a discussion that when athletes are struggling, whether it's to remind them of perspective, athletes who play with pure love and joy in their hearts, or as I say, the classic Beatles song, "All You Need Is Love," and what that actually means in the way of conducting our lives and from a performance standpoint. Your opinion on spirituality, does that ever come up when you're interacting and trying to be in a supportive role with athletes?
It absolutely does, whether it's a person that's religious or spiritual, and sometimes they're alike, sometimes they're not. But just that whole idea of having something to believe in that's greater than yourself is a powerful mechanism. Whether you believe in God, whether you believe in Yahweh or Allah, whatever it may be,
right?
If that's what you believe in, that's wonderful, and utilize that, and I will respect that, and I will listen, and I will try to understand and be compassionate to help utilize the spirituality to just make you happy within your life. Maybe your spirituality is more something that's like nature, that's more of kind of that animalistic spirit. That's what drives me. It's anything that's greater than ourselves. Within the AA program, Alcoholics Anonymous and even Narcotics Anonymous, it's giving yourself up to something greater than yourself. And that doesn't have to be religion,
Right.
but it has to be something that you believe is greater than yourself. So it should play a role in everyday life, let alone sport.
Well said, Andy. My last question to you, and I know you've got to get ready for a big series in St. Louis. Advice to someone who wants to enter this industry, whether it's a former player, whether it's someone going and getting their PhD degree, getting their certification, any advice that you could have received maybe 10, 15 years ago when you first started this thing that might help the next generation of mental performance coaches?
So the times you mentioned the Beatles, so I'll drop a Bob Dylan here. The times they are a-changing. Major League Baseball, and Major League Baseball, I don't know anything about the NBA or NFL, but they are moving toward having, number one, needing formalized education, number two, being CMPC certified through the Association of Applied Sports Psychology, so a certified mental performance consultant. That's not going to happen tomorrow. It's probably not even going to happen next year, but I think it is coming down the road.
Right.
That being said, in professional baseball, if you were an ex-player, and so John Baker, who is now our vice president of performance, he was our farm director, and he was a mental skills coach for the Chicago Cubs. Mm-hmm. He got his degree while he was a mental skills coach, but he did not have the degree while he was technically the mental skills coach. So teams can hire people to be anything they want. And we can hire you to be a special assistant, but you're going to do mental skills. So that might change, but you do not need in any realm a PhD to be a mental skills coach in the collegiate, high school, or professional ranks. You just need a master's degree. And I say just, that is not minimizing a master's degree, but some people may think, oh, crud, like, do I need to go spend another 6 years in school? No, you do not. The master's degree is, at this point, for most universities and most professional organizations, is the bare minimum for entry. So that's what I would say, is that's kind of getting more to that point of needing that formalized education and those formalized exams, no different than a strength coach or a physical therapist.
So, Andy, what you're telling me is that I am not qualified with my JD to talk about this topic. I think you just insulted me.
Not at all. It's not at all. But that's the other thing too, is that for the longest time, people have been doing this without formalized education. Right. This is not. You're not performing therapy. You're not performing surgery. This isn't a HIPAA thing.
Right.
And this is not. This is. I think that if somebody's good at this, they're good at doing this. Yep. We have two mental skills coaches in the Pirates organization that do not have any background in this, let alone a JD, let alone all the research that you've done, Tony. Like, no, you don't, quote unquote, big picture need a degree to do this. It was more just, there's some logistics that are now being put in place by the powers that be.
And I think, to your point, in a perfect world for people that are trying to enter this thing, getting the master's degree, getting certified in CMPC, and then building and developing people skills, because this, to your point, is all about rapport, and it's all about trusting and waiting for that magical moment for the athlete to say, please deliver and share with me. I think that you're right. And I've seen some really good coaches that didn't even graduate college that are really good at talking about life skills, parentheses, mental performance. And I've also seen people that have graduated that just don't have the people skills, the emotional intelligence, and the ability to connect, yet have all of the clinical answers, but there's never any connection to the soul of that athlete. And so I think you're right. In a perfect world, and that was my question, go get the education, go get the certification, but don't underestimate the power of connection. And that, quite frankly, is why you're one of the best of the best. And I can say that because I know who you are. I've talked to coaches who have been around you. You have the degree. You've got the former player credentials, which is helpful. And more importantly, you care. And when you care, and when athletes see that caringness, maybe some of them, it's not the right time. I always say this, even in the line of work that I do on the vision side, Andy, the teacher arrives when the student is ready. And you certainly have been in the business long enough to understand that. But that's great advice to give to the future Andy Bass is when you're a general manager, or you're running your own program one day, you're out of the industry, or you're continuing to hopefully get the Pirates moving in the right direction. You'll have young Andy Basses there that'll take that information and advice that you just shared, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And you know what I do apologize for, I certainly would never intentionally mean to insult you and the work that you have done. That was more of an information download to people, because what you mentioned to me, I have known many people that have a lot of education and they know a lot of stuff. I would never hire them. Yeah. And I would give me that person that understands life, that knows how to connect, that cares, that can build rapport with no education, versus the person with 2 doctorates that's clinically trained, that can't form a relationship with themselves, let alone a Major League Baseball player. Yes, give me the former any day of the week. And
you know what, Andy, it's funny. The people will ask me, Tony, what do you do? Okay. Actually, my daughter, Michaela, who you know, Dad, you know what? People still ask me, are you still an agent? You run a company, you have a law degree, you're still listed with Major League Baseball as an agent, which shouldn't be the case because I'm not certified there anymore. Yeah, you do this vision thing, and you bleed into the mental skills piece of this thing. Dad, I think people need to understand what you do. And I kind of laugh at it. I'm at a point in my life now where I have taken the position that the mental skills curriculum that's out there, it's great, it's good, but this is something even 25, 30 years ago with Ken Revisa, it is missing the vision piece. And I know you and I have talked about this, and kudos to you for realizing that it is a part of mental performance, that if the eyes are part of the brain, part of the central nervous system, what we look at and how we look affects mood and mindset. It has to be included in the arsenal of tools and concepts when you're talking to players, especially hitting. So I kind of enjoy not being invited to the party, Andy, of the mental performance coaches. It's my way of saying, hey guys, I think what you're doing is great, but you're missing something. and so when I talk to mental performance coaches who are young, I simply keep talking about rapport, and go and research open focus. Learn about what Dr. Femi talked about years ago. Go talk to major league hitters, because you know as well as I do, when they're struggling, what are the first things that they're typically coming back and telling you about? What's not happening?
I'm just not seeing it.
I'm not seeing it. Boy. Okay, so if they're not really seeing it, and there's a ton of reasons why they're not seeing it. It could be a timing issue, it could be a swing plane issue, it could be thought overload to whatnot. But I'm not seeing it, and for a young mental performance coach to be able to provide them with something in the vision world, that to me is going to separate the young Andy Basses who are coming up at some point, to be able to understand that vision is mental and mental is vision, and the eyes are the window to the soul. And the more you look at seeing as a performance tool, and to be able to understand that how we track a moving object is a choice. And I don't want to get into the details you and I have shared before, but I really wish that mental performance coaches would be so much more open-minded like you are in understanding that there's a major piece that's out there that should be integrated when you're talking to people. Agreed.
It's there's no mind-body, it's mind-body dualism. They're not housed separately.
Well said. Andy, I can't thank you enough. We have been on, I promised that I would not take more than an hour of time. We're at the hour and 2 minutes. Andy Bass, mental performance coordinator, good guy, friend of Frozen Ropes, and a mental performance coach that gets it on so many different levels. I can't thank you enough, and we'll make sure probably in a day or two, Andy, we'll send you over the full podcast with your full background and all the wonderful things that I'm going to say about you that was not said on this call. And I'm hoping that whether it's the player, a hitting coach or even some of the young mental performance coaches that are out there in the audience, they listen to what you shared, and it'll hopefully make them both a better coach and a better person. So I want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Tony. This has been an honor and a privilege. It really has.
We'll talk soon, Andy, and good luck in St. Louis, and get the Bucks moving in the right direction, please.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, take care, Andy.